Welcome to the stage, founder of Black Hat, Jeff Moss.
How about that bass? Yeah, first we put you to sleep and then we smacked you around the head with some bass. Hey, welcome. What I want to do is set the stage, so to speak, of about what you're about to witness. This is an evening keynote session. It's pretty rare that we do these, and this is going to be done in a moderated conversation format. And the idea is we want you to feel like you're sort of in a private observer in a private conversation, listening to two experts talk about this evening's topic. And while we won't have time for Q&A at the end, there is an exhaustive list of topics that they will explore. And so I hope you get a lot out of it. I'm proud for this session. It's something I wanted to see happen, not just because my friends are involved, but because I think it's an important topic and very timely. So let's get this party started. Welcome to the special evening keynote session, Phoenix Soaring, what we can learn from Ukraine's cyber defenders about building a more resilient future. And this is going to be a conversation between, on my right, Jen Easterly, Director of CISA, or as we like to call it, America's Cyber Defense Agency, and Victor Zhora, keeper of the longest title, Deputy Chairman of the State Service of Special Communication and Information Protection of Ukraine on digital development, digital transformation, and digitization. So, yeah. Not a busy man at all, no responsibilities, no pressure. Victor. And then this evening's conversation is going to be moderated by Lily Hay Newman, a senior writer at Wired, and she specializes on information security. And so with that, it's my honor to pass it off to Lily and our panelists. Thank you so much.
Well, hi everyone. I'm Lily from Wired, and just want to say hi to both of you. Hi, Victor. Hi, Jen.
Hi.
Hi.
Glad to have you here. And Victor, thanks for traveling from Ukraine to be with us today. We really appreciate it. So yeah, we want to talk about cyber resilience today and the example that Ukraine has set in building this, really a model of, that cyber resilience, functional resilience, and societal resilience all coming together in tandem. First, I just want to ask Victor, can you give us kind of an update on the biggest digital threats facing Ukraine right now and kind of the landscape in recent weeks, recent months, so we can talk from there?
Well, thank you, Lily. First, I will start from maybe saying a couple of words. It's like being a musician in a childhood, starting playing an instrument and never dreaming of performing, Carnegie Hall or Hollywood Bowl stage, and being a cybersecurity specialist starting my career. I have never ever dreamed of being a keynote at Black Hat USA. So thank you for having me. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Lily. Jeff, of course. Thank you all. And this, of course, due to our amazing, brilliant partnership that SSSCIP and CISA have established, and due to partnership that Ukraine and the United States have in cybersecurity, and not only, of course, and also due to bravery of Ukrainian people and armed forces of Ukraine, that we continue successfully fighting for our land. Thank you so much. Regarding our observations in defending our country in cyberspace, I would say that we, of course, follow all changes, all shifts in Russia's offensive cyber strategy in terms of targeting Ukrainian networks from both in public and private sector. Of course, there is a shift from destructive and chaotic attacks to more focused activity in cyber espionage and data collection. And in recent weeks, we discovered activity together with the Security Service of Ukraine in networks of Ukrainian armed forces. So Russians targeting our situation awareness system, tactical battlefield systems, in order to gain information that, to their opinion, can give them some advantages on the battlefield, of course. So this tactic continues both in the security and defense sector, and logistics, in supply chains, service providers. That's caused by this continuous way of warfare that we have in Ukraine, and cyber is used widely, not only for impact but also for intelligence purposes.
In that recent attack, I was reading in the report that you all were able to disrupt that and identify that campaign very early in the operations, that there had been a lot groundwork laid, but that then you identified it, sort of early on or mid-stage. How do you approach things like that to get ahead of, does it come from years of experience dealing with this barrage, or how can you get ahead of these clandestine operations?
Well, I don't think that many of us have this experience. For years, we are facing these threats, maybe partially from 2014, but in such severe mode, starting from the date of full-scale invasion, and we have January 14th, 2022. But in terms of what enables us in reaching out to potential victims earlier than the incident happens is due to partnership and due to threat intel that we are getting from our partners. And this case is exactly the same. So having this intelligence before something bad happens is a crucial thing for cyber defenses. And if the adversary collects data for their intelligence, then we have this brilliant opportunity of getting intelligence in cyber prior to these bad things happen.
Yeah, and I guess along with that, we're going to all talk about how did Ukraine get to where it is now and build this culture of resilience, and maybe we can talk a little more about both experiencing, the attacks, the disruptive and devastating cyber attacks that Ukraine has faced over the many years, and the U.S. watching, and observing that saga.
I'm happy to start.
Sure.
So first of all, thank you for.
Hi, Jen.
Hi. And thank you, Victor. As I said, I want to do the smallest amount of talking because I really wanted to give you a platform to be able to talk about the amazing work that you have done, not just over the past year and a half since the invasion started, but really what you all have done from a cyber defense capability perspective starting in 2014, and how you have built capabilities to Lily's point, proactively respond to an onslaught of attacks. The barbaric kinetic attacks get the headlines, and it really is horrific. And, again, I'm so humbled and awed by the Ukrainian people. But there have been an onslaught of cyber attacks and ongoing. And so what you've been able to do to deal with that, I think, is something that we are learning lessons from every day. And it's sort of a 1-year anniversary since Victor and I and our team signed this memorandum of cooperation that has allowed us to really focus on how do we more effectively share information, best practices, exercise together, train together, figure out how to hunt for adversary activity on networks together. And we've been learning as much from you all as I hope you've been learning from us. And it's helped us, I think, become better at what we're doing from a cyber defense perspective. But the reason that I wanted to have this discussion is really about, as you said, Lily, the example of resilience. Because we know, given the state of networks today, the connectivity, the interdependence, the vulnerabilities that exist because technology is not secure by design, we are very likely going to see attacks that cause great disruptions. And learning from you about the resilience in cyber, the operational resilience, and frankly, the societal resilience that you all have demonstrated in a shining example of unity, fighting on to deal with, fighting on to victory, I think are things that we as Americans really need to internalize as we see the full range of threats from adversary nations and aggressive cyber criminals. And so, again, I think I just want to thank you for the partnership, but for your leadership and for the shining example of resilience that you have given to the world.
Thank you, John. So a great privilege and an honor to have this amazing partnership with you and CISA, and thank you for your leadership in this, Bill. It's great to share these amazing results that we have gained throughout the last year. But to be frank, the adversary has trained us a lot since 2014, and I can name these major cyber incident that Ukraine faced over the last 9 years, starting from attack on Central Election Commission in 2014, following with attacks on the Ukrainian power grid in 2015 and 2016, and ending with the most destructive cyber attack in history, NotPetya. So, of course, it's evolved in a time of full-scale invasion when cyber component became a natural component of this hybrid warfare. All our previous experience was used to build capacities, and also with the great help of our partners. So we used best practices. We learned from United States, we learned from our European partners in building capacities, in setting up requirements, standards, in training people, and improving our cooperation, in reaching out to private sector, started working with them, with suppliers, with IT providers. That's complex work, of course. It takes a lot of time and efforts. But the unity that private sector demonstrated during full-scale invasion is absolutely amazing. We cannot ever expect this kind of engaging to our joint task in defending of our country's cyberspace. And of course, we have domestic partners, we have global partners, we have partners in governments. So everyone contributes to our cyber resilience, and that is collective work, of course.
Yeah, we're going to talk more about the U.S.-Ukraine collaboration on cybersecurity, but since you brought up NotPetya, one thing I wanted to ask about is through many years of digital attacks on Ukraine, and both under the Obama administration and the Trump administration, the U.S. was not so quick to publicly attribute attacks to Russia, or in the case of NotPetya, it took many months to kind of do that attribution and denounce that activity. What has changed there, and what's the significance of that shift to Ukraine?
Well, I mean, I can start just to your point about the policy. So, like at the end of the day, I think there is a high bar for the intelligence community to come and make a judgment. I do think it's gotten faster over the years. And, you know, for us, from a cyber defense perspective, the attribution is important, but it's not the main thing. I mean, for us, if we see an attack, or if we're told of an attack, really being able to respond as quickly as possible, understand the threat, the tactics, the indicators of compromise, so that we can use our platform to be able to put together an advisory or work with our private sector partners or our international partners so that we can broadcast what's happening so that we can prevent other victims from getting hacked. That's, to us, is the most important thing. Like, ultimately, attribution will typically follow, and I think, again, we're getting faster and faster. The one thing that I would say that I think was really extraordinary about Ukraine was that the intelligence community in advance released an enormous amount and declassified an enormous amount of information that really helped to build a coalition that came together early on to ensure that we were able to protect critical infrastructure. That was part of our Shields Up campaign, to get us working together early on, to get the private sector energized. And I think increasingly we are going to see more of this information that is provided as effectively as possible to help get ahead of, again, it's all about being proactive and getting ahead of increasingly serious threats.
I completely agree, and I would say that we should focus on information sharing and building of trust. So it's not just only posting some IOCs information on threats. It's important to have this information to be treated properly by our partners, particularly in private sector. So we should do both, not just only providing public attribution, but in fact, the United States were the first country who officially attributed cyber attacks on Ukraine. We never did before the full-scale invasion because of potential political implications. Of course, it's always a tough thing to properly identify and attribute a cyber attack. But it became much easier after public attribution of attack on Viasat, which happened in the first hours of war. And it was made jointly by 27 countries. And it became much easier after this to officially attribute most of vast quantity of cyber incidents in Ukraine to our enemy, of course. And the fact how attribution can help is in identifying the exact persons who are standing behind these attacks in order to bring them to accountability sometime. I don't know why, I don't know when, but it should act as a preventing measure as well. But back to prevention and back to sharing information and to collective cyber defense, it's great to have such initiatives as Cyber Flag, as a counter-ransomware initiative, and Ukraine is happy to contribute to these initiatives, being a part of them.
Yeah.
What has been particularly working well in the US-Ukraine collaboration on digital defense? And yeah, let's start there. What's been working well? And I was going to say, what have you all been working to improve over time?
Maybe everything, since we are learning and threats are evolving. So we improve mechanism of coordination and collaboration between cybersecurity agency. We improve cooperation with private sector. We scale up our capacities in cyber defense. We continuously train people, and one of the recent results is having this wonderful opportunity to train our people in Idaho labs, which was proposed by CISA, and thank you very much, Jan, for this again. So again, improving our international cooperation, because we have a lot of partners, not only in governments, but also in private sector, global IT providers, who are great contributors to cyber resilience. And we need to follow all these lines of effort in order to avoid skipping of some important things that we should definitely help with.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, having seen this for decades now. You think about how closely we work with international partners, right? Obviously, the U.S. has very close relationships with our Five Eyes partners. But I would say what we've been doing together over the past year now is probably the closest we've worked, operationally speaking, with any foreign partner in terms of how we're thinking about sharing information with our CERTs, the Computer Emergency Response Team, and then enriching it with what we're both getting from the private sector, other international partners, and what we're seeing in the government network. So that piece, I think, has been better than I've ever seen it in terms of being able to build a threat picture. But as you said, the type of training that we're doing on things like threat hunting, I mean, to me, why I'm so energized about this, it's a model as we think about other nations that are under threats from adversaries, that we can think about what is good, what does effective capacity building look like? And I think that's really, really important as you think about the threats to critical infrastructure in the coming years.
When we talk about building digital resilience, I'd also like to ask about maintaining that digital resilience over time. And thinking about the Ukrainian counteroffensive right now, how difficult is it on the cyber defense side to kind of maintain that resolve and morale, as all of this conflict drags on, and there's so many pressures on all sides?
Well, certainly it's not an easy task, especially when our enemy attacks us with cruise missiles, and it's difficult to maintain a continuous working process, even for cyber defenders. And of course, it brings a lot of challenges for the armed forces and for all usual processes in society. But what's important, and what's our focus over this 1 year and a half, is giving opportunities to people to use electronic services proposed by government. And that is achieved in many ways, starting from ensuring connectivity, bringing satellite devices as alternatives to fiber optics that is often broken because of shellings and airstrikes, in data and infrastructure migration to clouds, which is widely supported by our commercial partners. This enables business continuity for important services. And this is extremely important for those people who were cursively relocated from areas closer to the battlefields, internally and externally. They continue to use these services for identification, payment services, because banks also provide this migration. They use different web services, accesses to registers, and that means that Ukrainians can live normal life. In addition, of course, we ensure this with appropriate defensive measures in cyber, preventing these systems to be hacked online. So it's what we can call this digital resilience. But in the center of all our efforts, of course, are people. We are doing this for people who, despite of all circumstances, of all challenges, can live their normal life in this understanding that aside all threats, all power shortages, all air alerts, curfew, etc., they can normally use services and even develop economy in time of war.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what I find so extraordinary. Because you think about the type of threats that we're facing. We're obviously still focused on potential Russian attacks on our critical infrastructure. But if you look at the intelligence community annual threat assessment, it gives a pretty stark warning of threats from another adversary nation, from China. It talks about in the event of a conflict in the Taiwan Straits, China would almost certainly consider aggressive cyber attacks against U.S. critical infrastructure, whether that's oil and gas pipelines, transportation. And I think that's something that we really need to internalize, frankly. And when you look at some of the reactions to the attack on Colonial Pipeline, when you look at some of the reactions to the high-altitude balloon, I don't see that level of resilience in terms of how we respond to potential threats. And that's why the message about we should anticipate threats, we should anticipate disruption, we should work to build that resilience by identifying what's most important, by doing exercises to be able to operate and continue to provide critical services in the face of disruption. And we should be unified as an American people in the face of these very serious threats. And so again, that's why I think the example, not just of cyber resilience, but of operational resilience and societal resilience is so important for us to internalize, particularly in a world where we have a very short-term attitude. And we really need to ensure that we're preparing now for the various serious types of threats we are likely to see in the next 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
If I may continue. Frankly, we don't know how many implants we have in our systems, in our ICS, SCADA, critical infrastructure. But we certainly need to go to operators of critical infrastructure, set up requirements, set up standards, encourage them to invest in cybersecurity, and not only cybersecurity. And SSSCIP, the agency which I represent here, acquired this function recently, becoming almost a copy of CISA sister agency, since we're responsible not on cyber protection, but also on critical infrastructure. And this is completely new domain of responsibility for us. So we should learn a lot from CISA and from US experience in dealing with critical infrastructure. But certainly this is a high concern. And what we see, what we observe from attacks on our power grids, on critical infrastructure. Of course, it's much easier to attack an energy object with a cruise missile, but in case it can be reached with the use of kind of cyber operations, so a cyber weapon, the adversary certainly will do this.
Yeah, and I'm curious, Jen, how you think the U.S. can move towards bridging that gap, given what Victor has talked about sort of the necessity is the mother of invention, or that the adversary is the best trainer. You know, how can the U.S. internalize, like you're saying, the lessons from Ukraine and try to move to that redundancy and, you know, infrastructure resilience and the mindset ahead of time?
Yeah. I mean, to be frank, it's very hard because we all as humans, and I think in a world where, you know, every 4 years, every 2 years, every 6 years, there's elections and there's always the news of the day. I think it is hard to break through in some of these messages that we've been trying to carry out. I do think when we launched our Shields Up campaign, that was helpful in catalyzing a response across critical infrastructure of the need to very urgently raise the bar on cybersecurity. And we have not seen significant attacks here, although we were very aware of planning for those attacks by the Russians. I think part of that is deterrence by escalation and punishment, given the very serious concerns that the president articulated to President Putin. But I think part of that is also deterrence by denial and resilience, that there was a huge effort to raise the bar on cybersecurity. But I do think that we're going to need to do a few things, and we've been talking about this at CISA for the past 6 months. It's really the fact that we need to have a sustainable approach to cybersecurity. What we are doing as we see the threats continue to get more serious, as we continue to see increased global cybercrime damages, doing the same thing is just not going to work. And so we've been talking about the importance of building technology that is secure by design. So moving up the chain, not patching and not bolting on security after a product is released, but actually making sure it's secure out of the box. That's how we get ahead of some of these threats. The importance of corporate cyber responsibility, where CEOs and business leaders are taking responsibility from the top for managing cyber risk and really treating it as a business issue, not as an IT or security issue, but ensuring that the IT and security teams are well resourced. We talk about persistent collaboration where we're working together. I mean, imagine 2014, there was like no cooperation, I think, between the US and Ukraine. Look at how far we've come in working together in a persistent way. And it's not just us, it's the rest of the international community, it's the private sector. And we do it in a way that's really, in my view, transformational, because it's a recognition that there's a default to share. If there's a threat to one, there's a threat to many. There's a reciprocal understandings that we're going to be transparent, we're going to be responsive, we're going to add value as governments, but also from the private sector, that if they share information, they don't have to worry about being punished. And that is also a change that we're trying to motivate. And then there's this whole idea of shared platforms and scaled analytics. So we really are trying to catalyze a transformation in how we share information so we can put the picture together, connect those dots, be proactive, drive down risk. And so this is a different approach. And frankly, we are learning by doing. That's the other thing about resilience. You know, you have to continually learn and improve and move forward in a way that we recognize we are going to have to deal with disruption. But if we do it smartly, if we consistently invest in our people, in our technology, and in our processes, we can get ahead of the threat and we can reduce risk to the nation and frankly to global cyberspace.
You mentioned elections. I'm curious, you know, when we're talking about lessons learned from Ukraine, how that's factoring into planning for defending the 2024 U.S. elections. And, you know, Victor, you've worked in election defense for many, many years. I'm curious how digital threats to global, just democratic elections globally have evolved. So both the U.S. piece and in general.
Or to you?
Okay, I'll go. So folks may know CISA plays a role called the Sector Risk Management Agency for Election Infrastructure, and that was in 2017 after evidence of the Russians interfering in the 2016 election, where election infrastructure was designated critical infrastructure. So of course the US government doesn't run elections, we don't administer, we don't manage. It's our mission to provide the support to state and local election officials that they need to ensure the security, the safety, and resilience of elections. And so we've been working for the past 7 years to help state and local election officials have the resources, the information, the capabilities to ensure that elections are secure and resilient. And frankly, it's been a sea change in terms of how we work together with state and local election officials. And frankly, we are talking to them on a regular basis to ensure their cyber capabilities, but also their protection from physical threats, from insider threats, and from serious disinformation from foreign influence and adversaries. Of course, we've seen that from Russia, we've seen it from China, we've seen it from Iran. Victor, you can certainly talk about your experience with influence operations on critical infrastructure and election infrastructure, but we have already started working this problem set. And frankly, I am, you know, just as I'm in awe of the Ukrainians and everything that you've done, I'm in the awe of state and local election officials, frankly, some of whom have been threatened personally, have had threats against their families, who do this work on the front lines of democracy because they believe in it, because they believe in democracy, because they believe in safe and secure and resilient elections. And, you know, I always say, in the military, when I was in uniform, and that's really my identity as a soldier for over 21 years, people used to always say, thank you for your service. Well, when you go out to vote, thank election officials for their service, because they are there, some of them volunteers, some of them making very little money, and they're doing it because it's the right thing, and because of all of the measures that we've put in place, that they've put in place, that we've helped, frankly, of all the cybersecurity, the audits, the paper ballots, the physical security, the measures, the segmentation. yes, there will be things that go wrong. There always are. And election officials are natural-born crisis managers. But at the end of the day, it is off the back of their hard work and our support, the rest of the federal government, things that we've learned from our partners. The American people can have confidence in the integrity and resilience of those elections. And we have made this one of our very top priorities. We're working day in and out on it, and we'll be focused on it up until the election and beyond.
Well, certainly elections are the core and the baseline of democratic society, of democracy. And in case the adversary wants to influence or wants to conduct subversion in a society, he will first focus on elections. So that should be our highest priority in protecting the election results, in protecting the result management system and the entire election process, because this is the weakest, the most critical thing that we should focus on in protecting of the national critical infrastructure. In Ukraine, all elections since 2004 were attacked in different ways, and for many years I was responsible for securing the elections. And I would say that certainly it's a very difficult task, because each time you know that you will be intact, but you don't know how. That means that we should be united. We should train all people involved in the election process, even politicians, election officials, observers, everybody, to build this trust, because we can always face some technical issues, but we should do everything to avoid decreasing of trust to the results of election. And since we have war in Ukraine, it's not very relevant to us nowadays, but certainly we're watching how the US will deal with it, and I'm absolutely confident that we will succeed in protecting of upcoming elections.
Thank you.
We need the vote of confidence, definitely. Just to kind of wrap up here, we could talk for hours, but last year at Black Hat, Victor, you talked about Russia committing what you called cyber war crimes. And I'm curious, in the past year, like how both of your views of that term have evolved.
Well, it seemed to be very promising in using of this new concept, and we work close with our colleagues from law enforcement in Ukraine, with academia, with the Prosecutor General Office. Perhaps it's early to share any practical results, but I do hope that it will have perspectives and in bringing of this new concept to our everyday practice.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's unsettled ground, obviously, in terms of cyber war crimes. There is some good work being done on this. At the end of the day, what I worry about, I wouldn't say the most, I worry about a lot of things, but is cyber being used to have a direct impact that's going to result in loss of life. So we're seeing some of these significant ransomware attacks against hospitals, for example, that cause diversions of patients from emergency rooms. Sometimes they have to delay procedures. And so, the potential for cyber to be used in a way that ends in the loss of life. And certainly, when you look at very serious attacks against critical infrastructure that could then result in loss of life, I think that's how you think about potentially the war crime aspect of it.
Well, it's really a pleasure to be here with both of you. And Victor, thank you again for traveling here and joining us and sharing these insights. Thank you.
Thank you. That's my great privilege. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Victor. Thank you, Lily. All right, I'll see you around. Thank you for a successful day one of Black Hat.